Hey guys, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Nuns. Today we're studying Haggai chapter 2. Let's get started.
Okay, so Haggai chapter number 2 is the end of the book. So if you've read 2 chapters, you finished the whole book of the Bible. Congratulations. It's also a funny book because, I mean, how do you really say this guy's name? So I just say Haggai. I've heard others say Haggai. And I've heard it other ways, and here's the thing, I still don't really know how to say it, so I just say what comes out, Haggai. Now, here's what may help you whenever you read through this book. So remember how Israel had a bunch of kings. Remember, we finished reading 1 Kings. After Israel had all their kings, they were carried away to the land of Babylon. That was Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then Babylon fell to the Medes and the Persians. When that happened, the Medes and the Persians let the Israelites go back home. That first group that went back home is discussed right here in the book of Haggai. They had a guy that his name was Zerubbabel. I mean, that's also a funny name. He was their governor. They have another guy in this story. His name is Jeshua. It looks like Joshua, but it's spelled like Jeshua. Really, they're the same word. He was the high priest. Now, when you read through this story, you got to understand they're coming back, and when they get home, everything is crumbling, everything is destroyed, and they're kind of overwhelmed with all the things that they've got to do. Their first priority should have been to rebuild the temple. Why? So that they could worship. Because if they didn't get worship right, they weren't going to get anything else right. When they laid the foundation of the temple, you can see this in the book of Ezra, chapter 3. By the way, we're going to read Ezra in a few weeks too. In Ezra chapter 3, it talks about whenever they finished laying the foundation of the temple, that the young guys who never saw the temple, they yell so loud with excitement that the land like echoes. The old men who saw the old temple cried and were weeping because they were so sad, because what they had now couldn't compare to what they had then. And so there was joy and sorrow, and it said that the whole land almost shook. But they all mingled together and they were all yelling at the same time. The other thing is, when you read the book of Haggai, it's almost like a redo of the book of Exodus. Because in the book of Exodus, they were trapped by the Egyptians. They come out of Egypt and into the promised land. And the guy who led them out of the promised land and out of the wilderness and into the promised land was Joshua. Well, this guy's Jeshua. So they came out of Egypt, now they're coming out of Babylon. They had Joshua, now they got Jeshua. And they're coming into this land. Remember, when they came out of Egypt, they went to all their Egyptian neighbors and said, hey, give us your gold and your silver. And they did. And so they brought all the riches with them. That sounds a whole lot like what happens in verse number 6. It says, for thus says the Lord of hosts, once more, it is a little while. I will shake heaven and earth and the sea and dry land, and I will shake the nations, and they shall become the desire of all nations. And I will fill this temple with glory, says the Lord of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, says the Lord of hosts. Okay? So they had that, and now they're coming home. Well, this is a really neat thing, but the key to the Exodus is the key here. The key to the Exodus was that God was with them. Then here in verse number 4, it says, I am with you. This is where John's takeaway comes in. John, tell us what you got.
All right. So, so something cool I saw is, when they were going to the promised land, and well, not in the story, but they were going to the promised land, God told them to be brave or be strong 3 times. And then he told Solomon to be strong 3 times when he was becoming the king. And so also he told them to be strong 3 times when all this bad stuff happened. And also this kind of reminds me of Joshua 1:9. It says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, because the Lord your God is with you. And yeah.
I like that. So when you read Haggai chapter number 2, this is like new hope for them. This is them being excited because yes, they sinned, but God's not finished with them. Matter of fact, This is all about God's grace. Because they had gone away and had gone into exile because they had sinned. But now God is bringing them back, and he says, I'm going to make things better even than they were before. And when you read through this story, what it sounds like is God not only redeems, he blesses. He doesn't just bless, he restores. And so what initially begins as their kingdom like in crumbles, slowly dying in their own disobedience, God is promising that they're going to grow and they're going to be strong and that they're going to have a leader who is going to be focused on him. I love how this book ends where God tells Zerubbabel, the governor, he said, I have chosen you. Here's what I like about that. I like, because if I put myself in his spot, looking around at all the work that was to do, I could have got really overwhelmed. And I think he was. But how comforting was it to know when he looked at all that around him, God's whispering in his ear. He says, hey, this doesn't all depend on you. This is not all about you. You don't have to do all this by yourself because I am with you. I think that's the most comforting thing somebody can hear when they're overwhelmed with life, or when God says, I am with you. That's Haggai chapter number 2. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.